Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome to the Rant, everybody. I'm Jon Strong with my co-host over there, Evan Altman over there. Hey, I got that right this time. Woo. How's it going, Evan?
It's going, I guess, about as well as it could be.
After whatever happened yesterday.
Yeah, whatever happened yesterday, and again, at the risk of pissing anybody off, well, I won't get into it, but I feel like the last week has lasted at least a month.
Why is that?
Well, I don't know. On that. There was some stuff that happened on Wednesday of last week, and just I think between it was an odd week in general, and I think and I had
true
completely forgotten that the college football national championship game is even tonight. It was a weird, with the expanded playoffs and having 3 games, and I liked the way they did that. Honestly, the way it was set up, I enjoyed having just the 3 games back to back to back, Saturday and Sunday both. But just some weird football, and the Bears that they had the the Nickelodeon broadcast, but it just
seemed appropriate for the Bears, though.
Yeah, it kind of felt that way.
They belong on Nickelodeon.
Except, like, if you want kids to like the sport, why in the hell are you subjecting them to a Bears game?
Maybe be the Chiefs.
Yeah, like, give them something fun to watch. But it just the world, man, is so odd right now, and so I feel like if I was a better man, I would not be so online, but I am way too much so, and it just makes the days drag, dude. I should stop.
Yes, I would agree with that. I am a little different. That I'm really not all that online. I am insofar as I have to be with the Bears and the Cubs stuff that we do. But outside of that, I really just dislike social media. Just generally, we won't get into that. But it's just not my jam. Let's put it that way. So I'd rather go out and run around. So I run a lot. I ran 18 and a half miles on a trail. So I have a trail, mountains outside my house here. And that's what I do. That's what I run, and training to do the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim, to run it all in one shot. So I have a backyard full of mountains.
And how long is that?
It's 42 miles.
How long is that run?
It's a 42-mile run, and it's a total of 20,000 feet of elevation change. So 10,000 to one side, 10,000 back to the other side. So, but fortunately, like I said, I live in Phoenix, and I've got desert mountains right behind my house. I've got a big, huge park called South Mountain Park that has, just hundreds of miles of trails. So it's cool. So it's gives me some place to kind of go and get away from the nonsense for, several hours, here and there. So that's good. And that's what I do to pass my time. And then I come back and I'm like, oh God, what's happening again? Like reality.
Well, and I've kind of working from home, and then you have the holidays, and then I got, I think, I can't remember if it was on this show or the other one I had discussed, that I got 2 really big shipments of beer. And so I've got a whole lot of beer and a whole lot of time. And so, I realized, I was like, I should probably cut back and reserve this for the weekends and not, to get better sleep, everything else. So I did not actually drink at all throughout the events of Wednesday. And I kind of wish I had. Wow. Yeah, it was really weird for me. But, and then, but the problem is that you blow it up. So I got, there's a Portillo's right down the road. So I got a big old double cheeseburger, some onion rings from Portillo's.
That sounds delicious.
It was incredible. And then I had a Nashville hot chicken pizza on Saturday. So Sunday wasn't my most comfortable day ever. and some heavy beers. So
for many reasons.
Yeah, but you know what? The one thing that I've actually gotten into, in addition to beer, and maybe I've discussed this, but I've gotten back into collecting Stephen King books, particularly first edition copies. So I've been, going to half price books and going on eBay and finding, trying to find deals and pick up and fill out my collection entirely. So that has actually been kind of a nice thing. Now, the thing that I need to do is maybe actually start reading some books rather than just collecting them, because perhaps that would keep me offline.
That kind of goes hand in hand with collecting them, almost, doesn't it?
Well, I've read all of them, and so what I realized, is back in the day, and I had a few, right? I had a few that I started out with, but generally, back when I would frequent the library, right? And we're talking about, like, I started reading this stuff when I was 12. So a majority of my consumption of his work, I think, came between the ages of like 12 and 25, at which point I didn't have any of my own money, and my parents aren't just going to buy me a bunch of hardback books. So I would either read paperbacks or I'd get them from the library. And so I never actually owned them, or at least I didn't have copies that would be considered, collectible, or the kind of things that stand the test of time. And so, so I've been going back through there and kind of trying to bring those up. So there are a few that I've got that I have not read, which is interesting, and I will start getting back into that. But it's just kind of a fun endeavor.
How many books does Stephen King have?
It depends on kind of where you look at it. It's somewhere north of 70.
Wow.
Yeah, and it depends on how you break it down too, because he's got some that are nonfiction. There are some that are novellas that were published separately, and some in collections. I think I'm somewhere north of 50 at this point. Some
all of which hardbacks?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I have some paperbacks as well, but I've got the whole spreadsheet and, kind of going through it and trying to get them.
Where do you store those?
We have some they're not technically they're not built-ins because they're movable, but we have bookshelves on either side of our fireplace and television in our main living room area. So right now they take up 2 full. Now I should note that some of these are duplicate copies. Like I had a copy of it that I bought new, like just recently, like a newer version of it. But then I was at Half Price Books and I found a first edition, first printing for something like $20. And then I bought 2 other ones. So I have 4 copies of it. I have 2 copies of The Stand. I have 2 copies of The Dark Half. That sort of thing. So some of those I'll probably try to flip and sell off because they're worth some money. I found some copies at Half Price Books of some first editions or limited editions that are pretty expensive. But, by and large, it's just kind of going through and digging them up for $7, $8, $9. The early ones are a little bit more difficult. So we'll see. I got my eye on a first edition copy of The Shining that I'm going to wait on, see what happens there. So, but it's fun. It's kind of a neat deal. I like seeing that there, and it makes me feel a sense of satisfaction, I guess, when so many other things, at least in sports, are not giving me such a sense.
Well, it's something that you control, which, in today's era that we live in, it's nice to be able to control something that gives you some sense of satisfaction other than these like things that you have absolutely no control over, but yet still we talk about them a lot.
Yeah, oddly enough. So maybe we will talk about some of those things that we can't control and honestly don't need to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we may as well. We are a Bears, appropriately named the Rant, though. When we were coming up with names, and this one kind of came out, it was just kind of, it just felt right. But boy, given the current state of both the teams that we cover, the Cubs and the Bears, this episode being the Bears, of course, very appropriately named. And the Bears yesterday were a big pile of steaming dog doo-doo. Particularly, I mean, I don't even know where to start. You go.
Yeah, so I get let me just go ahead and get out of the way the one thing, which is and again, in the grand scheme of the game, it didn't really make a difference, although it did back him up 15 yards at the time. The unsportsmanlike taunting penalty against Cole Kmet, where he came up and it was Malcolm Jenkins who was there, and they were joking with each other, and he tosses the ball over Jenkins, and there were 2 officials there, but he tossed it to the second official, and they flagged him because they said he had aggressively thrown it toward an official or a former. There's nothing about that. It's not. He lobbed it up over 2 people, right into the referee's hands, right into his hands. I mean, it was Javon Wims wouldn't have caught it, but it was. But that was so odd. But yeah, that if we're going to talk about though, that the Javon Wims play is the most inexcusable drop. There's never, and for a couple reasons. And I tweeted this out at the time. I was like, how many good deep balls have we seen a Bears quarterback throw in the last, not just this season, but I mean the last several years? I mean, we've talked about it on here how they're terrible.
Good, solid. Yeah. We've seen some deep balls that have gone for completions.
Right, but this one was perfect.
Perfect.
And I mean, it went literally right between his hands.
It was
He just
literally
missed it
right
completely.
here.
You cannot make a better throw. He had separation from the defender, and it was a trick play, right? They did the little double reverse, and Trubisky had it, and that would that have tied the game? I'm trying to remember at what the juncture was. It 7-0
I
at
think
the
they would have
time,
given them
or
the
was it
lead.
7-3? And it would
I think
have
it was
been
7-3.
So either way, like that, right? And the thing was that in and of itself was a big play, and those suck to lose. But the fact that the Bears never have a play that perfect and that good, you're not going to get that chance back. You will not be able to. Obviously, it was a trick play too. You can't replicate that. So, for a number of different reasons, that one stung really badly, and it just like that to me. And it was odd because it's Wims, and he was getting more targets, presumably because Darnell Mooney was out. But that right there, like as soon as that happened, I just okay, well, there goes their deep threat. Right, they're done now. They will not get that back, and now it's going to turn into the dink and dunk show, which is eventually what did happen. And they turtled up, as we see so often. Right, it's like they'll take one big swing, and if that does not work, they then back off of it completely and play scared for the rest of the game, which I will attribute to Matt Nagy. Again, as we have said, and we talked about on this last time, Ian Rappaport had reported prior to the Packers game that Nagy was taking back more control over the offense. And I think we saw the fruits of that, not just in the Packers game, but in this last one where, again, the flow was not there. We were not seeing Trubisky rolled out and having his reads limited nearly as much. The scheming and the play calling was not the same as what we had seen in those 4 straight offensive explosions. And so that part was frustrating to me, but I think that was a longer answer than what you wanted me to open with, but there you go. There's my preamble.
No, I would agree 100%. My biggest issue, obviously, the Wims drop was terrible. That's obvious, and you knew when it happened. You're like, oh, we're not going to get another opportunity like that again. So it was a good early opportunity to really put some pressure on the Saints offense when the defense was playing really well. And that was kind of the biggest thing there is the Bears really missed that opportunity. But you're right, Matt Nagy, there are some people that are defending Matt Nagy, and I think I get where you want to defend him. But listen, Matt Nagy he's not a good coach. He's not a bad coach. He's learning, but he's not a good coach. And because a good coach doesn't do the things that he's done this season, where it was clear when he handed Bill Lazor responsibility for the offense started to click. They were better than they had been all season. They were scoring over 30 points a game. They were looking really good. The play calling, there was a nice smooth flow to the play calling. It made sense how the plays stacked on top of each other, and everything felt really good. And then the last couple of games, Nagy took over the play calling duties, or at least interjected himself much more than he had been prior. And that's clear. And if Matt was here, I guess we could talk to him about it. But at the end of the day, it was
maybe we should go back and look at the tape. I don't know what happened. I got to go look at the tape. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know
what
why
he would
that
tell
worked.
us. That's what obviously he would. Well, let me go look at the tape. I don't know what happened.
And so it's just they weren't running the ball when they should have been running the ball. They were throwing the ball instead. They throw the ball on 2nd and 10. They run the ball on 2nd and 10. They throw on 1st and 10. Then they'd run on 2nd and 10, and then they'd be in a 3rd and 10, or 3rd and 8 or something like that, where they'd have to pass the ball. It was just that type of thing, which is kind of, you can't really get a drive started if you don't get that first down, right? You've got to get the first down. So too many 3 and outs, just really poor play calling. I mean, Trubisky was not bad yesterday. I mean, if you look at his stats, I mean, it feels bad because the Saints just couldn't move the ball, but the Bears just couldn't move the ball. But that was more of, I felt, just the terrible play calling. Trubisky ended the day with a 96.8 quarterback rating, which isn't bad. I mean, Drew Brees was 107.3. threw for an average of 6.9 yards. Drew Brees threw for 6.8. I mean, they were very comparable stats. If you look at the two quarterbacks, there was nothing really that stood out. What stood out is New Orleans ran the ball much better than the Bears did. David Montgomery only had 12 carries yesterday, 2.6 yard average. And
that right there, to me, that's one of the biggest hallmarks of a Nagy play call, a Nagy game versus a laser game, because we saw Montgomery being given the ball in the right spots consistently throughout the game. Even and again, I go back to it. So we saw that deep ball, and we see this with Nagy all the time. They'll swing for the fences. If they miss, they immediately then start to try to bunt, if we are to use baseball parlance in football terms. In the same manner, he won't, if the run game isn't, actually either way, if the run game isn't really working, he'll stop doing it. If the run game is working, he'll still stop doing it. And it's just, there isn't a consistency to it. So sorry to jump on that, but that I wanted to make that point, and Kyle mentioned it in our chat as well, that Montgomery was just utilized very poorly. Even if, again, and he wasn't breaking off any big runs. It wasn't like he was looking incredibly dynamic, but you can't just give the guy the ball 12 times and be like, oh yeah, he just doesn't have it today. You know what I mean? Like, you have to pound the ball more frequently and keep the ball away from Brees.
Yeah. I mean, and that should have been the game plan, right? I mean, that definitely should have been the game plan. And then if you look at what they did on their last possession of the second half, they were down 7-3. They get the ball on their 22-yard line or wherever it was, and they have 2 timeouts left, about 2 minutes left, and they run the ball 3 straight times and punt. That and Nagy said that he didn't feel like the Bears were in a good position to that doesn't make any sense.
It's terrible game management. His situational game management, and this goes back to the same as the play calling. I just don't think he has good situational awareness. Period. Yeah. Just that's it. But I will. Speaking of awareness, though, and I know you mentioned Trubisky, but here's the thing. So if I piggyback on that and a really poor decision he made, because the play right after the Wims, I mean, that was deflating enough. So they got third down, and I don't remember the distance, 6 or 8 yards, whatever it was. So Trubisky's got to get out and run, and he ran out of bounds short of the line to gain. So there's two problems with that. Again, you run out of bounds, you stop the clock on third down, so you're not actually helping your time of possession whatsoever. And again, it's not as if he was being tackled in the open field. He voluntarily ran out of bounds rather than diving or cutting back or trying. And I get it, right? You don't want to get hurt, and maybe he's hearing the footsteps of when he ran the ball and got his shoulder hurt several weeks back. But that's just the lack of awareness that is there. We can no longer chalk this up to a lack of experience for Trubisky. He's been around and too many people want to do that. Like, well, he didn't. No, I get it, and I've said as much. Like, he coming out of college, he didn't have enough experience, and so there's reason to believe that he needed a longer runway than someone like Mahomes or Watson, who had been multi-year starters, who had gotten a ton of reps, right? He just didn't have the time as a quarterback. I get it. We're way past that at this point. And those aren't things. If you don't have that awareness, and now you've got a quarterback who doesn't have very good situational awareness with a coach who doesn't have very good situational awareness, it just doesn't work out. And plays like that, when you see a 3rd and 8 where they'll throw like a 3-yard route, and that's something I feel like the other teams, I guess, fall prey to that, but I feel like that's something the Bears have been doing for 30 years.
Unfortunately.
And those are things that I can't forgive. When I Trubisky kind of avoided some of the really dumb, like the red zone picks and things like that. We didn't, of course, part of the reason is because they weren't down there often enough for him to do it. But that play coming off of so you talk about just getting punched in the mouth and then punched in the gut right afterwards. Those were 2 plays that just crushed them. And I understand that Trubisky never should have been in position, like that catch should have been made. And that's fine, but we cannot use that as an excuse for a poor play afterwards. You cannot compound one mistake with another one. You've got to be able, this is the NFL, man. People are going to make drops. There's going to be problems that happen. You have to, in any sport, really, you can't just look at that and say, well, it's not his fault. But it is. I mean, he made a perfect play, shouldn't have been in that position. Too bad. Suck it up, make up for it the next time, right? And we did not see that. And the Bears just looked overwhelmed. Eddie Jackson played like shit and has all season, really. He's not been the stud that he was supposed to be. I mean, they were exposed, to, and they did have, the secondary was depleted. Obviously, not having Roquan was certainly a problem. Not having Mooney, as we saw with Wims, was a problem. There were a lot of things stacked against them, but when that happens, I think we talked about this last week, and knowing that those guys might be out at the time, right, because they had been hurt in the previous loss to the Packers. That was at the time and I think when you asked for my prediction, I said if Smith is out, I don't give him a shot at all because they've got to be perfect. If you're missing those kind of guys,
in that first half, they were pretty close to perfect.
They executed well, other than like leaving Michael Thomas pretty much wide open and letting him run over him for that one touchdown. But otherwise, I mean, they held the Saints in check. But I think that's what when you face a team that's at full strength and you yourself are not, you can only trade punches with them for so long. And it's really difficult. The Bears are not a team that's built to come back. The Foles comeback win earlier in the season and a couple of those games aside, they simply didn't have the firepower to match up with the Saints once they fell behind. And then, it's unfortunate. And they didn't have it. But
yeah,
we'll see.
Looking at some of the stats here, third down efficiency, the Bears were 1 for 10, which is terrible, obviously. New Orleans was 11 for 17. So, I mean, that's, if you think about that, man, the Bears got 17 third downs, forced the Saints into 17 third downs. That's pretty incredible, man. I don't remember ever seeing a number that high. And that's the Bears defense putting themselves in good position. But then the Saints converted on 11 of those. They, the 27 first downs for the Saints, only 11 for the Bears, 21 minutes of possession for the Bears versus 38. That's about the most lopsided offensive numbers I can remember seeing in a long time in a game that was not a blowout. I mean, it was basically the score was 21-3, I guess, but which is bad. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's just, it's back to the drawing board kind of game, really is what it feels like. And the thing is
that
I expected the Saints to crush them. And the fact that didn't happen and the Bears were actually kind of in it after the first half, the way the half ended, the fact that Wims dropped that ball, just some of the things that transpired, how the game unfolded, how it kind of, to me, felt like it bared Matt Nagy and kind of for everyone to see, where his failings are. I think that's the thing that really kind of rubs me the wrong way with this game.
Yeah, and it there was another report from Ian Rappaport, and I wrote this up, saying Trubisky's future is uncertain. The Bears are going to have to go on a big playoff run with him in order for them to want to bring him back. Although, and again, we go back to I do not believe this is a matter of purely of experience. I just don't believe Trubisky has the overall football IQ to be an elite quarterback, to even be a top tier, top half quarterback. I think he lacks that. Does he have the athleticism? Yes. I don't think he's got the arm talent. And even if he did, he does not have the ability to make those reads and make, to be a pocket passer. And so they're going to have to slim down the playbook so much to him that eventually other teams can figure that out. But there again, I don't know that Nagy has, whether it's the awareness. And the other thing he doesn't have the awareness of is that he doesn't know, and maybe it's, I don't know if it's ego or if it's ignorance or what, but he doesn't know what he doesn't know. I mean, everybody can sit there and say it. We've all been sitting there and saying it. And he keeps talking about how he loves to call plays. He wants to be a play caller. That's what's in his blood. Well,
he needs to go be an offensive coordinator somewhere.
He needs to get a blood transfusion. Maybe that would help so he can get that shit out of his blood, because it's not working. And so no comment. I do not believe a combination of those two can work consistently.
That's true.
We saw at times when it worked well, when Trubisky was managing games properly and when they put enough weapons around him. But here's the thing: is they may not have as many of those weapons, especially if Allen Robinson is gone next year. The problem is though, so where did the Bears go? Right, they're not going to pick high enough. What do they pick? 20th, or do they get to 19th? Because
Bears have the 20th. Bears have the 20th pick in the 2021 draft on April 29th.
So I did see one mock that had Mac Jones going number 19 to the Washington football team, who, again, I was thinking the Bears were 19th, but I think the way it shook out, although somebody said they'd go 19th with a loss because Washington moves down because they were the division winner or something. I haven't looked, but I didn't think that would happen. I thought the Bears were at 20, but either way, right? You're not talking about a likelihood of getting a quarterback who could step in and be your starter from game one. Maybe, but probably not. Nor should they get a quarterback at that point because they need an offensive line so badly. But who's available out there? Like, are you going to go get Cam Newton? I mean, we said he was awful in New England. Do you want Cam Newton as your quarterback and to pay him the amount of money, although he got a super cheap deal? Right. I don't want that. Who else is out there? Like, who's available? Are you, again, you're talking about a limited cap space. Are you going to go sign a quarterback for a ton of money? Are you going to go try to pursue Carson Wentz? I hope not. Nick Foles is still getting paid a bunch of money. So you can't go out and sign some top tier quarterback who's available out there. Deshaun Watson wants to be traded. Do they have the draft capital to land Deshaun Watson? Would he? And apparently he's going to play hardball because he's got a huge contract. He might say, screw the Bears anyway. You guys didn't even bring me in for an interview, right? And we think we know the reasons for that. And so would he even want to go there? Probably not. I don't think those things happen. So it's almost like Trubisky is still your best option if you can get him on a cheap deal. They declined his 5th-year option, but can you get him on a cheap extension of some sort? Get him on a 1 year, because where else is he going to go? What other options is he? They've put themselves.
There's some questions
in a bad position, right?
Yeah.
There are no good answers. There's a bunch of bad answers to me, and next year is going to be okay. What's the lesser of 55 evils that we can get? Is kind of what they're asking themselves. But at the same time, like, we think Nagy's safe. That's what all the reporting is. But is Pace there? Is Ted Phillips still there? Do they bring in a new director of football operations? However they want to do. Like, there's so much about this team that is completely up in the air, and it doesn't matter. Like, I hate the idea of tearing things down. I don't like when those things, and part of that's because we've got our Cubs side of things, and we're kind of looking at that right now, and so I think I'm more. But the thing is, the Bears are existing as they're in this state of inertia. They're not in a good position to actually get better with what they have. It's kind of like they're stuck in this neutral, and they're hoping maybe they can get rolling downhill enough to get enough momentum, but that's not going to help. And I feel like they really do. If they are serious about winning and getting better, they need to clean house, because the combination of talent and leadership that they have right now, to me, is not conducive to winning on a consistent long-term basis. But so there you go. But I don't have answers, and that's why I don't like this. I don't. The one thing I hate about the way I've been criticizing and what I'm saying right now is that I fully believe that you shouldn't criticize unless you've got a solution, unless you have something to actually add. So if you just, and too many people do this online, right? And they'll just talk shit, and they don't actually have anything. You ask them to back it up. All right, fine. Provide your own 1,000 word piece on this, and then they'll,
we'll give you access to the site. Go ahead and write that up.
Like, nobody ever does, because they know that they would be exposed themselves. And that's, like I said, the only thing I know that I could come up with as a solution is get rid of Pace, get rid of Nagy, get rid of Trubisky, bring in a president of football operations, hire a new GM and a new coach, and let them start from scratch, and give them enough runway then to bring in their own people. And that's the thing that's kind of painful, is it's not going to be fixed overnight. But the NFL is far, far different from Major League Baseball in that there's greater parity, and the salary cap means that teams are on a more level playing field. You can go from really bad to good to really good in a period of just a couple of seasons. And that's the only possibility I can come up with right now.
Well, and there's a number of people, be it the pundits or just fans, that are easily placated with Um, the notion that the Bears have made it to the playoffs, Nagy has made it to the playoffs 2 of 3 years. And so let's keep in mind that this year he made it because there was they expanded the playoffs. The Bears got in a spot that didn't exist prior. So this would have been a non-playoff season for the Bears. Really should have been a non-playoff season. You could easily argue that. They kind of got really lucky the way they got in, and it was the last spot that did not exist prior to this year. So, sorry, I don't consider that 2 out of 3 years making the playoffs. This was just an extra game, basically, for the Bears. They had no shot of winning. They had no shot of advancing. Just making the playoffs does not mean anything to me, and I don't think that that should ever be the goal, and I don't think that anyone should be satisfied with the Bears just making the playoffs with absolutely zero chance of winning. I think in the offseason, what the Bears should do is, yeah, I agree. I don't think that they're going to tear it all down like that. I don't think they're going to fire Pace and Nagy. And I don't know what they're going to do with Phillips. I don't think he's going to leave the organization. I'm sure he's going to stay. It's whether they bring somebody in to run the operations, football operations side of things and take that responsibility away from him. That's up in the air. But I think they've got to go after Deshaun Watson with every single thing they have. I mean, I don't care who they trade to get Deshaun Watson. That is a guy who is, to me, he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I would take him any day. He's a winner. He's an athlete. He's so good. You could build around him with literally nothing. I don't care literally who you trade. Does not matter. That's what they should be doing. If they can't get Deshaun Watson, then they probably are going to have to go with Nick Foles next year. Mitch is going to be gone. And at some point, the Bears either have to be really bad to get better. They're not going to get that quarterback unless they get real lucky. They're not going to get the quarterback, the franchise quarterback with the 20th pick, like ever. And this isn't the season. I'm glad that they weren't real bad this year because I just don't like the quarterbacks at the top of the draft. But I think they come back with Nick Foles, and I think they're probably about maybe an 8-8 team, maybe worse. They lose Allen Robinson. They've got these young guys in there. Who knows what they do? Hopefully they improve their offensive line. And that's kind of how they have to roll. But I kind of feel like they need to have a year, and if it's next year, so be it, where they're just terrible, where they're like 2 to 3 wins, just to be able to get in position. But then I'm not sure who the quarterback is going to be. It's like if you look at who the draft class quarterbacks are this year and who's staying in college, I mean, there's really nobody that jumps out at you as kind of the guy you'd want to draft next year after another year in college. So it's kind of a precarious position for the Bears, to be honest with you. That's why I say I just think they've got to go all in on Deshaun Watson, do everything they possibly can to get him. He's young. He's going to be around for at least 10 more years, barring a severe injury. And that's what you do. And then that's a guy who you can win a Super Bowl with. That's a guy who you can win many Super Bowls with.
Right. Of course, the only problem is if you've got to move 2 first-round picks to get him, can you build your offensive line? Can you get enough of those guys? And maybe they can. Maybe they go second-round picks and you just load up on that because it doesn't matter how good he is if he doesn't have a line to throw behind. But, the thing is, and yeah, I'd say I agree that I'd say he's the top 5. I'd still say Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes are better, in my opinion. Josh Allen has played really, really well, but I do think, and I mean, Rodgers is insane, right? Like, I hate to admit that, and I'm sure somebody will probably get pissed off with it, but Aaron Rodgers is just an incredibly good quarterback all the way around. And he's had one of the best seasons of his career, if not the best. I mean, he's going to be the runaway MVP. It's what it looks like. But yeah, I mean, and that's the problem of being in the middle. You don't want to cheer for your team to lose, but being 8-8 and backing into the playoffs does them absolutely no good. It does not help in any way other than putting some more money in ownership's pocket. And that's, I'm with you on a lot of those. And the problem is, and that's where I'm saying, realistically, they need to clean house and start fresh with a lot of stuff. However, we know very well from the way this ownership group operates, this family, the McCaskies,
Yeah.
they're not going to fire Ted Phillips. So if he retires, they might be able to replace him. But if he's still there, they're sure as hell not going to bring in a high-priced executive to run football operations and pay 2 top guys for football and business. They're not going to fire Nagy and bring in another top-flight head coach and pay 2 people to do the job because Nagy's still under. Right, that's just the way these things work. The Bears, they were never going to like those. Had they operated like a normal team, what we saw in Detroit, we saw with Jacksonville, they would have in Houston, right, which is part of the reason why Deshaun Watson's so pissed off. The leadership, the coaching staff, or at least Nagy and Pace, should have been fired after the Lions loss. They absolutely should have been. The fact that they weren't was not surprising because the Bears never fire anyone midseason. But then that is what the following, making some changes based on that, turning over the play calling duties. Now all of a sudden they win 3 out of the next 4. So that was their 6th in a row, right? Was that their 6th in a row that they lost? Yeah, and they scored 30 points in that one, right? And then they run off 3 straight wins. You're like, ooh, they're back at, so they got enough to be able, and this they being ownership, to be able to justify running this back. You say, hey, look what they did here. But finishing the season 3-7 is unacceptable.
Yeah.
That should never be acceptable. And just saying, hey, we didn't have a losing season. We had another non-losing season. We made it to the postseason. So here's something you can build upon. But it's not. The foundation for their mediocrity is only going to produce more mediocrity because you're not looking at a team that is built to be balanced properly, especially moving forward. And I just do not see any actual direction. And I guess that's my other problem, or my biggest problem, I suppose, is that the team does not have an identity, right? The Bears, and what we thought early on was, okay, the defense is going to provide the identity. And we're going to see this stalwart defense going to hold other teams to 10 to 15 points. And all the offense has got to do is score a couple touchdowns and they're going to win a bunch of games. But we didn't see that. We saw the defense exposed frequently. We saw that, the defense was not consistent at all. Right. And so neither side of the ball. So if you have just that, even if your offense is bad or inconsistent, if the defense remains really, really good, you're going to win yourself some games because the defense is going to come up with big turnovers and score points.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I didn't see often enough was the Bears actually scoring. But anyway,
and they've got that. The defense is kind of in place, but that's why I say, I mean, if you look forward and try to think, how does this team win a Super Bowl? Because that's the goal, right? I think I would
hope so.
How does this team get in a position to win a Super Bowl? So, that's where everything that you said kind of makes perfect sense, right? It's like, in order to get in position to win a Super Bowl, something's going to have to change dramatically with the offense. Either they get a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, or they draft a quarterback. But then what's the timeline for that, right? And so we're looking at a 5-year timeline before anything's possible, short of acquiring Deshaun Watson. Which, but
at least if they did that, at least there would be a direction.
That would
be, it wouldn't be inertia. You would know
having a blindfold on and bumping into things is the Bears,
right? And that's where they're at. At least if they tore something down, or if they drafted a guy, like, you would feel as if they had set a course that they were planning to follow. Right now, that does not appear to be the case whatsoever. They're just kind of floating in the doldrums and just hoping that a nice little breeze comes along to blow them, into some better climates. But that is not the case. And I don't know that they want it to be actively. I think they're perfectly comfortable where they're at right now. And that's the problem.
So, hey, we've identified the problem, and hopefully the Bears go about and the McCaskey family go about identifying the solution, because we'll see what happens over the next week or so. I don't expect a lot of big news to break, but we'll see. I'm not sure if we'll be back next Monday, by the way. I'm actually going to be up in Colorado. So Evan and I will game plan around that and figure out if we come back next week, or maybe we wait.
I would say we take it off. Next week is MLK Day. So I know a lot of people will be off and just kind of maybe we take the week off and maybe a midweek or something like that. We can run it back. But I'm cool with taking next Monday off and sort of giving everybody a break.
Yeah. So best case, we do something midweek, which I wouldn't count on, and then definitely be back in 2 weeks. So until then, hopefully the Bears make some big moves, and we'll talk to you guys later.
See
Thanks
ya.
for joining us.